Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button, so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks. My name is Sharon. And this is how I found out my son didn't just forget where he came from, he helped someone erase me from his life. I guess you have everything now, huh? Her voice echoed through the room like a whip. Sharp. Proud. Cold. I was still standing by the door, holding the cake box I brought for my son's birthday, homemade, like always. Carrot cake, his favorite. Or at least, it used to be. But no one had even noticed me walk in. Not until she spun around and smirked like a queen claiming her throne. You can go now, Sharon, Vanessa said without even looking at me again, flicking her French manicured hand like I was some pest to be swatted away. We're good. We don't need anything else. Then she turned back to my son, draping her arm around his shoulder like I was the outsider. I blinked. Excuse me? That's when she laughed, loud, theatrical, like she had rehearsed it. Oh, come on. You heard me. We don't need her anymore. My hand clenched around the cake box so tight the cardboard bent inwards. But my son, didn't say a word. He didn't flinch. He didn't turn. He didn't even look at me. He just sat there. Like a statue. Like I was invisible. You know what? I said, stepping forward, placing the cake down on their fancy white marble counter. I thought maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. But I should have known. I wasn't invited last year, either. You said you were busy. Said you were traveling. But you were right here, weren't you? Mom, don't do this. No, you don't get to talk now, Jason. Not after letting your fiancé talk to me like that. Not after sitting there like some spineless little, I choked on the word. My voice cracked, but I forced it through gritted teeth. You really forgot who raised you, didn't you? Vanessa's laugh sliced through me again. Raised him? Sweetheart, you worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. You didn't raise him. You struggled with him. We built this life. Together. We? I spat. You'd been with him for 2 years. I was there for 26. I was there when his father walked out. I was there when he had night terrors. I was there when we had to sleep in a borrowed car for 3 nights because I couldn't afford rent. Vanessa's lips curled. Well, good for you. But now he has me. And we don't do broke energy in this house. Jason finally stood. But his eyes didn't meet mine. Mom, it's my birthday. Can you not do this right now? Right now? Jason, she just said she doesn't need me. And you said nothing. My voice rose. I didn't care anymore. The neighbors could hear. The whole world could hear. I didn't drive 2 hours, in traffic, to be insulted in front of my own child. Then maybe you shouldn't have come, Vanessa said, sipping her wine. You just show up, uninvited, with some cake from the dollar store. It's homemade. I said, barely able to breathe. Even worse. She chuckled. And that was it. Something broke. Not just in my heart. But in my spirit. Because I looked at my son, and I realized something terrifying. He wasn't fighting for me. He wasn't defending me. He wasn't even conflicted. He had chosen her. Vanessa leaned in like she was sharing a secret, though her voice was loud enough to pierce glass. We're getting a new house next month. Gated community. 6 beds, 5 baths, private lake. Jason's bonus finally hit. My parents helped with the down payment. Not that it's any of your business. I swallowed hard. My throat burned. I raised him better than this. No, she said, tilting her head with mock sympathy. You raised a good little worker. But I raised him up. There's a difference. Jason looked away again. His shame was so loud, it rang like a bell. And that's when the words left my mouth before I even realized what I was saying. I inherited $2 million last year. Dead silence. Vanessa blinked. Jason finally turned his head. I kept going. I didn't tell anyone. Not even you. I wanted to see who you'd become without money clouding the truth. I wanted to see if you'd remember love, or loyalty, or decency. But today? Standing here? I see it clearly now. You're lying, Vanessa snapped, but her voice faltered. You've always been broke. I pulled the letter from my purse and tossed it on the counter. From my late aunt. Estate settlement. Full amount. Signed and notarized. Vanessa lunged for it like a starving dog, eyes scanning, face paling. Jason stared in stunned silence. You didn't even ask me how I'd been, I whispered, stepping back toward the door. You just assumed I had nothing. That I was nothing. And now that you think there's money involved, suddenly, your silence doesn't feel so quiet anymore, does it? Jason finally spoke. Mom, wait. But I shook my head. No. You had your choice. You made it. And now you can live with it. Vanessa's voice cracked as I turned to leave, a desperate screech that barely sounded human. Wait, you're seriously just walking away? After everything? I didn't stop. My voice was calm now, but my soul was on fire. You said you didn't need me. Remember? I didn't cry in the car. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me together. Traffic blurred in front of me. Horns honked. A siren screamed somewhere in the distance. But all I could hear was her voice. We don't need her anymore. It echoed in my skull like a curse. And what hurt the most? She was right. They didn't need me. Not for money. Not for advice. Not for love. And that realization cut deeper than any words they'd thrown at me. I thought back to the nights I'd skipped meals so Jason could eat. The winters I'd sewn extra fabric into his shoes when he outgrew them mid-season and I didn't have the money for new ones. The birthdays I made special with handmade decorations, dollar store balloons, and the same carrot cake I brought today, because he used to say it tasted better than anything in a box. Used to. I remember the time he wanted to go to a friend's birthday at a skating rink, but I couldn't afford the rental skates. I sat on the bench outside the rink for 2 hours, just to make sure he wouldn't feel alone. I remember when he got his first job and brought home $73 from his first check, and insisted on giving it to me. I refused, of course. But I cried all night, because for a moment, I thought he understood. Thought he saw what I'd done for him. But somewhere between then and now, something shifted. Somewhere along the way, I became embarrassing. I became the mom who didn't dress right. The one with old hands and calloused feet. The one who asked too many questions at dinner and made people uncomfortable. I remembered meeting Vanessa for the first time. She wore designer boots and an attitude I'd only ever seen in movies. She barely looked me in the eye, barely shook my hand. Kept talking over Jason whenever he tried to speak. Always said I instead of we. I didn't need a crystal ball to know the kind of woman she was. I'd cleaned enough hotel rooms for women just like her to recognize the perfume of entitlement. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I smiled. I cooked for her. I even stitched a tear in her coat once, when she left it at my place and I noticed the lining was fraying. She never said thank you. Just took it back like it had always been that way. That was the pattern with her. She took. And took. And Jason just let her. I tried talking to him once, really talking to him. It was a quiet Sunday. I'd made dinner. Just the two of us. He was halfway through his meal when I finally asked, "Are you happy, Jason?" He paused. Fork midair. Why would you ask that? Because you don't laugh like you used to. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm just tired, Mom. You know how work is. But I knew the difference between exhaustion and emptiness. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to hear what I saw. And I stopped asking. Because sometimes, knowing the truth feels worse than wondering. Still, part of me hoped that one day, maybe. At a wedding, maybe when he had his first child, he'd look at me and remember. Remember who held him through fevers. Who taught him how to tie his tie. Who clapped louder than anyone at his high school graduation. Who stood in every crowd, quietly cheering for a boy who never realized how tall he stood on his mother's sacrifices. But today, that hope shattered. And as I sat in the parking lot, watching birthday balloons bob against a fancy new mailbox, I realized something. I may have raised a man, but I also raised a stranger. I could feel the money envelope in my purse, the inheritance check I'd never cashed. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was about what people reveal when they think you have nothing left to give. Jason had revealed who he was. And Vanessa? She'd revealed who she'd always been. But me? It was time I revealed something, too. No more quiet dinners. No more overlooked birthdays. No more swallowing my words just to keep peace. Peace without respect is just silence. And I was done being silent. I didn't show up to the wedding rehearsal. Didn't respond to Vanessa's snarky text, "Hope you don't get lost on the way to the venue. Wouldn't want you sitting in the wrong section, the groom's side is for family." I didn't reply. Because I had something else planned. Something no amount of seating charts, floral arrangements, or fake smiles could prevent. You see, I still had the check. The full $2 million from the property I'd quietly inherited from my father's side, land he'd bought when he was young and broke, which had now turned into gold thanks to new zoning permits. I hadn't told a soul. Not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted to see who my son would become without dangling carrots in front of him. And now? I'd seen enough. The morning of the wedding, I wore my navy blue dress. The one Jason once said made me look like a queen. The one he hadn't complimented in years. I walked into the venue alone. No one offered to escort me. Not even him. I sat in the second row. The front was reserved for Vanessa's family, of course. Her mother turned to me with a fake smile stretched thin across tight skin and whispered, "You clean up nicely." I smiled back just as thin. So do plastic surgeons. She didn't speak again. The ceremony started late. Vanessa wanted dramatic timing. Typical. The music swelled. The crowd stood. She walked down the aisle like she already owned the world. And Jason? He looked nervous. Not love-struck, nervous. Good. When it came time for vows, Jason went first. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. But he got through it. Then it was Vanessa's turn. And what she said wasn't just shocking, it was instructive. I've waited my whole life to be chosen. And now, finally, I get to build something beautiful. Just you and me, baby. No distractions. No obligations. No more pretending to need help from people who don't belong in our life. She glanced at me when she said it. Right at me. Her lips curled like she was sealing some final deal. The room went quiet. I stood up. Someone behind me whispered, "She's leaving." But I wasn't. I stepped up to the altar. Slow. Steady. Heels clicking like gunshots on marble. Jason's eyes widened. "Mom." I turned to the officiant. "I won't be long." Then I faced them both. "You know," I began, voice clear as a bell, "when Jason was 12, he had pneumonia. I stayed up 5 nights straight, watching his chest rise and fall because the doctor said if it got worse, we'd have to take him to the ER. The audience was confused. People shifted in their seats. I couldn't afford that. But I sat there. Held his hand. Spoon-fed him soup. Watched cartoons with him when he was too weak to lift the remote. Vanessa rolled her eyes. I smiled. You said, Vanessa, that you waited your whole life to be chosen. That you finally found someone to build a future with, without distractions or obligations. You looked at me when you said that. So let me clear something up. I pulled the envelope out of my bag. I was going to give you two a gift today. Not some silverware or a blender, something real. Something that could have built your future. Gasps around the room. Even Jason froze. But you don't need me, remember? You don't want me. I opened the envelope and slowly, dramatically, pulled the check halfway out, enough for the crowd to see the 7 figures. I inherited $2 million last year. Quietly. Privately. I was waiting to see who my son would become before deciding how to use it. Jason took a sharp breath. But now? Now I know exactly what to do with it. I folded the envelope again. I'm going to build something, too. Not a wedding. Not a home where I'm only welcome when it's convenient. I'm going to build peace. Maybe open a community kitchen. Or fund women like me, the ones who raised children alone and were discarded the moment they weren't needed anymore. Jason stepped forward. Mom, wait. Please. No. I looked him dead in the eyes. I raised you better. And you still let her talk about me like I was some outdated accessory. You let her laugh at me. You laughed too. Maybe not out loud. But silence has its own kind of betrayal. Tears brimmed in his eyes now. Good. Let them come. I won't make a scene. I won't tear your day apart. But I also won't be a ghost at your table anymore. I won't sit quietly and watch my love be discarded like cheap wrapping paper. I turned to the officiant. You may continue. And with that, I walked out. Head high. Shoulders straight. Leaving gasps, whispers, and a very pale bride in my wake. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. Not a single knock at my door. I'd walked out of that wedding with my dignity intact and a check still in my purse. And they had walked right into a marriage built on disrespect, pride, and silence. I wasn't surprised. But I was disappointed. It wasn't the money I grieved, it was the realization that I had raised a man who could sit beside a woman like Vanessa and still call her family. Then, one evening, just as the sun dipped behind the sycamore trees outside my kitchen window, the doorbell rang. I didn't rush to answer. Let them wait. Let him feel, for once, what it's like to be on the other side of a closed door. When I opened it, Jason stood there. Alone. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. But like the wind had been knocked out of the pride he always wore like armor. Can I come in? I stepped aside without a word. He walked into the kitchen like it was unfamiliar territory, like a guest in the house he grew up in. We sat. The air between us stretched tight. I messed up, he finally said. I just looked at him. He exhaled. Rubbed his hands over his face like trying to wipe the guilt off. Vanessa's furious. She said you embarrassed her in front of her whole family. I smiled bitterly. That's funny. I thought she embarrassed herself just fine. He flinched. She said you planned it, he continued. Said you only came to humiliate her. No, I said plainly. I came to see who my son had become. I left when I got my answer. That landed. I saw it hit him square in the chest. I didn't know about the money, he whispered. I nodded. You didn't need to. It was never a test about greed, Jason. It was a test about character. He looked up, eyes glassy. I wasn't raised to talk about you like that. Or to let someone else talk about you like that. I leaned back, folding my arms. No, you weren't. You were raised by a woman who sacrificed everything. Who gave up her dreams, her time, her body, her health, so you could have a future. And the moment you found someone new to admire you, you forgot. He wiped a tear with the back of his hand. She told me you were controlling. That you always made me feel guilty. I let her twist things. I didn't even realize it was happening until it was too late. I stayed quiet. What you said, about peace, about helping women like you, he swallowed. That stuck with me. I've been thinking about it every day. I saw the guilt. The ache of a son who realized too late the weight of the crown he'd cast off. She's gone, he finally said. That surprised me. What do you mean, gone? She left, he muttered. Packed a bag 3 days ago. Said if I wasn't going to cut you off, she'd find someone who would. Said she didn't marry me to babysit a mama's boy. I didn't respond. She took half of what we got from the wedding. Left the rest in a note. Said I'd figure out the rest once I grew a spine. There it was. The mask had cracked, and underneath all that glitter and entitlement was just another gold digger running dry when the well didn't overflow. I should have seen it, he muttered. The way she rolled her eyes whenever I mentioned childhood stories. How she hated coming to this house. How she'd mock your photo on the mantel when she thought I wasn't looking. His voice cracked again. I let her chip away at you, bit by bit. And I let it happen. Because I wanted to keep the peace. But now I realize, there's no peace without respect. I exhaled slowly. So why are you here, Jason? He looked up. Because I miss my mom. And I want to make things right, not for the money. Not for some inheritance. Just because I should have chosen you. I studied him. He looked older now. Not because of time, but because of truth. And for the first time in a long time, I saw the boy I raised standing in front of me. I stood. Walked to the kitchen drawer. Pulled out the envelope. His eyes widened. I'm not giving this to you, I said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded slowly. I understand. But I am going to watch what you do next. How you rebuild. Not just with me, but with yourself. Because you don't get to apologize and walk away with a reward. That's not how the world works. That's not how I work. I know, he said softly. I paused. You want to make it right? I asked. He nodded. Then start by coming here next week. Bring a hammer and wear old clothes. He blinked. Why? Because we're turning the garage into a food bank. And I'm going to need help installing shelves. He smiled, genuinely this time. I'll be here. The garage was loud with the sound of drills, shelves being leveled, laughter echoing between unfinished walls. It had been 2 weeks since Jason came back. 2 weeks of hammers, coffee breaks, paint splatters, and slow rebuilding, not of a structure, but of a bond. We didn't talk much about what happened. We didn't need to. Some things are better rebuilt with actions, not apologies. He came every day after work. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he brought old friends who were down on their luck, and he'd help them stock the pantry. Once, he brought flowers for the neighbor whose car he'd accidentally dinged in high school and never admitted. He was growing. Quietly. Slowly. Finally. And then, she came back. It was a Sunday morning. The pantry was almost done. Jason had just finished hanging the last pegboard when I heard the knock. Not the doorbell. A knock. I knew that knock. Soft. Calculated. Performed. It was the sound of someone who wanted to be let in. But on their terms. I opened the door and saw her standing there. Vanessa. Expensive sunglasses. A designer coat over a form-fitting dress. Heels too high for someone who claimed to be just stopping by. Oh, she said, peering past me. Is Jason here? I didn't answer. She smiled, a crooked, sugary thing. I figured I'd stop by. You know, talk things out. We both said things. Maybe we were both dramatic. I raised an eyebrow. You left him. She brushed a hand through her hair. Sometimes space is good. Makes people appreciate what they lost. I folded my arms. She tilted her head, feigning innocence. Has he mentioned me? I stared at her. You mean besides the part where you mocked his mother, tried to control who he's allowed to love, and walked out with half the gift money? Her face tightened. I didn't let her speak. You see, Vanessa, he has been talking. But not about you. He's been talking about building something that lasts. About finally seeing people for who they are. She smirked, lips tight. You think I'm here for the money? I didn't blink. Aren't you? Her nostrils flared just slightly. I'm here because Jason still loves me. And that's when he stepped out from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He stopped short when he saw her. They stared at each other. The wind carried the sound of birds, the low hum of traffic in the distance. I didn't think you'd come back, he said. Vanessa smiled. I thought we could talk. Maybe, start over. Jason looked at me. Then back at her. His voice was calm, but steady. I'm not the same man I was 2 weeks ago. She took a step forward. People fight. Couples say things. I was hurt. I didn't mean it. But you did mean it, he said. You meant it every time you rolled your eyes at my mother. Every time you made me feel like I had to choose between being a son and being a husband. You meant it when you said, we don't need her anymore. She opened her mouth. Closed it. And you were wrong, he added. I needed her. I still do. Vanessa's jaw clenched. Jason stepped aside and held the door open, not to let her in, but to make his point crystal clear. This house, this place, this woman made me who I am. And if that's a problem for you, then I guess we never had anything real. She stared at him. No fake tears. No apology. Just a flicker of cold calculation in her eyes, realizing her grip had finally broken. You'll regret this, she said flatly. Jason smiled. I already regretted the last year. This is me fixing it. She turned. Walked away. Her heels clicked all the way down the driveway. I closed the door. Jason didn't say anything for a moment. Then he turned to me, and I saw it, peace. Not pride. Not shame. Just peace. I should have listened to you, he said. No, I replied. You needed to see it yourself. He nodded slowly. I walked over to the cabinet. Opened the drawer. I pulled out the envelope. His eyes widened again. But I raised a hand before he could speak. I'm not giving this to you, I said again. Not all of it. He blinked. But I thought. I'm giving half of it to the foundation. And half to you, as long as you promise one thing. He nodded quickly. Anything. Use it to build something that gives more than it takes. Something that lasts. Whether it's this food bank or your future family, don't build it on shallow promises and polished shoes. Build it on people who stay when there's nothing left to take. He smiled. And for the first time, he looked like a man. My name is Angela. I raised my son alone. And when his bride said, we don't need her anymore. She was right. They didn't need me. But he finally realized. I was the reason he had anything to begin with.